the meltdown that I am seeing by some state workers about being called back to the office for 50% of the time, I'd like to say I'm astonished, but for some of you, work from home has become like a religion. The news came out late yesterday afternoon. Governor Tim Walz saying it's time. It's time to come back to the office. I have two thoughts on this, and I want to hear yours at 651-461-9226. First of all, a lot of you have a level of hatred towards government workers that is absolute lunacy. Government workers are just like any other workplace. There's some great ones, there are a lot of good ones, and there are some that suck, right? Like, isn't this true of every workplace? This is my belief. I think it is vastly overstated how lazy or whatever you want to say about government workers. I just don't buy it. And that said, those who are making the most noise today are certainly making a case for them being absolutely out of touch with reality. The governor asked state workers to come back to the office 50% of the time they're scheduled in a month. So picture 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Picture 3 days 1 week, 2 days the next. This, I mean, you could make a case it's not going far enough. But I think it's a reasonable step, acknowledging the fact that the state of Minnesota is largely, like all governmental units, has largely abandoned our inner cities. And you can argue, should we have all this office space? Should we have all of, yeah, we can argue about all of that stuff. But if we're living in today, looking at what we should be doing today, to me, the choice is clear. What we should be doing is not letting downtown St. Paul die without putting up an effort. You should see, actually, you shouldn't see my Twitter responses today. Because for the highly controversial take that, one, this is a good first step, and maybe a good final step. It's a good step. This is good for St. Paul. And I think it's good that we have flexibility in the workplace, that people are allowed to work from home when there's a good time for it. I think that this is good. Here are some of the complaints that people have about this. And the largest one seems to be that there is not much notice. One post on Blue Sky says, as a government employee, I can tell you that everyone is infuriated by the lack of notice. Previous moves have had 4 months notice. 9 weeks is insufficient. If you believed that work from home was going to be a permanent way of life, and you didn't all of this time start thinking through like, oh, I wonder what it would be like if they call us back. What am I going to do? What am I going to do for childcare? What am I going to do for getting my kids to school? What am I going to do for my mom who is critically ill and I'm taking care of her? What am I going to do? If you haven't been thinking about this at all, get a clue. Why would you not be thinking about this? When did it get like infused into mantra that this is our right to work from home? I just don't get it. 651-461-9226. I'd especially love to hear from people who work for the state of Minnesota. But I will say that I do think the government has a higher responsibility in this than even a regular company. Originally, I was ripping Target because Target still to this day has workers in their corporate headquarters on Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis. Target has people down here, I don't know, it's 5 times a year now for a couple of days. 5 times a year. And it drove me nuts. I'm like, man, Target was like held up as this great corporate citizen. They got their name on the baseball stadium, and they've got their name on the basketball arena. Target is not just a regular company. They're part of Minnesota. Well, you know what, everybody? Target is just a regular company. Doing what companies do. There's trying to save money, trying to provide shareholder value, trying to keep their employees. Fine. That's what they get to do. I do think that the government has more of an obligation. And I know if you're a government worker, you feel like that is unfair. That why should it be your responsibility to prop up the downtown retailers or the downtown coffee shops? And I will say this, it is your city. It's your state. The taxpayers are paying government workers to do their thing. And so, yes, you have a higher obligation to not do harm to the tax base, to property values, to a sense of energy and community that you have downtown. So suck it up. The meltdown to me is next level. 651-461-9226. If your job never needs to be in an office, as one texter, why as a CEO, shouldn't you just put all of the jobs in India or Costa Rica? You know, I do think this discussion about work from home, like most of our discussions, gets stuck in this sort of, you're either 100% for return to the office or you're 100% for work from home. I think that some happy medium is a good way to do it. Generally speaking, I think people should be in the office with flexibility. If you want to work from home one day, you should. I also think, generally speaking, there are a lot of jobs where the whole team is out of state. And so making computer programmers who have a whole team of people in India come to an office to do business in the middle of the night with people halfway around the world is stupid. My belief is this, and I want you to react to this. Those of you obsessed with keeping work from home are purely motivated by your own self-interest. You try to wrap it up in this like, well, there's community benefit, there's this and that and this and that. And the reality is you don't want to go to work. You don't want to pay for parking. You don't want to pay for gas. You don't want to pay for childcare. You don't want to pay for lunch. You just don't want to. I wish there were intellectual honesty, where people would just admit that they just don't want to. There's no greater good accomplished by working from home. You just don't want to. It's difficult when you're making a policy for the whole state, right? You're saying, all right, every state worker, because I'm sure some teams are working better than others. I tend to think this is less about kind of the usual corporate nonsense where they say like, oh, it's for better collaboration. And even the governor said that in his thing. It's, you know, I don't know. Like I tend to think the corporate bigwigs overstate that. I do think there is societal benefit to having people in these spaces, to not having people working in their individual house every day alone. I just don't think that that is good for society to have us all so isolated. I think there's benefit in saying like, yep, come back to the workplace. It's not perfect for everything. Your scenario, maybe it works fine with 1 day a week. We'll going to 50%, you know, maybe 2 days 1 week, 3 days the next. Will that significantly change your life or affect you? Now, nobody ever asked the diggers or the pothole fillers or the nurses or the cops. They've been working in person for a long time. It's the office workers who are absolutely losing it today. And I want to say this, I don't blame individual workers for being upset about it. And I don't blame the labor unions for saying they're going to fight like hell. Your job as a union is to fight for your people. And the people prefer working from home. There's no doubt about it. But unless you've got that negotiated into your deal, that is how it's supposed to be, we all work for bosses. And I just think it was utterly predictable that at a certain point, there was going to be pressure. The mayor of St. Paul has been asking for the state to send its workers back. Downtown St. Paul is a ghost town, despite sort of the nonsense that the elected officials there say that stuff is going, it's on the moving in the better direction. Give me a break. I will say that work from home started as an emergency response to a pandemic. And I don't know that it's a negotiated benefit. I think as workers, we act like it's a negotiated benefit. But I do believe the state of Minnesota has a bigger obligation to the wider tax base. And that does mean, I think it took too long, but here we are. I think it's good. And as always, you can find a new job. You can look for a new job if it doesn't work out.